Hello friends, this is Raj and I'm here to help you understand AI and AI related things easily with examples. Recently, OpenAI has released their Agent SDK, which was primarily known as Swarms, and this SDK is very powerful and it has bunch of features. So in this video, we will learn how to use this Agent SDK and build our own first agent. So let's get started. I'm here on my terminal. The first thing we will do is that we will create a virtual environment. Recently, I have been in contact with a tool called UV. This tool is helpful in creating virtual environment and fast as well. It is very easy to install. You can follow one of these two steps based on your operating system, and you can use it along with pip. So whatever you were doing with pip, just place UV in front of that. So I'm going to use this as well, but if you don't want to install or don't want to use this tool, you can follow the tutorial with pip as well. So here I'll say UV venv python and 3.12. Now this tool is helpful in a way that if you don't have Python 3.12, you can just use this command. It will download Python 3.12 and create a new virtual environment using 3.12. So I'll hit enter and I'll source into this virtual environment. I'll open my Visual Studio Code. Let me zoom in a bit and let's put this side by side, and let me just make this bigger. Okay, so now since we are in the virtual environment, let's start building our agent. So this tutorial or the quick start guide says that install OpenAI agents. So we will install that. I'll come here. So we are using pip command, but since I'm using UV, what I'll do is that I'll just add UV in front of that. And when I do that, you can see how fast it is. You know, if you have faced issues with pip and the slowness, then you will like this as well. I will add one more package called python-.env to read the environment file. Then I'll freeze the requirements so that anyone watching this tutorial can just install from the requirements.txt file, and for that we'll use this command pip freeze greater than requirements.txt, but I'll put UV in front of that and it will create requirements.txt file. So it seems that we are all set to start working on our agent. For that, I'll create a new file, main.py. In this, I'll write all the logic. Then there will be a config.py file. In this file, we will read all the environment related variables or sensitive variables. I'll create first variable OpenAI_API_key. This will be our OpenAI API key, and I'll just paste my API key here. I'll save this. Okay, and I'll close this. Please don't share your API key with anybody you don't trust, because it is very sensitive information. Now what I'll do is that I'll import OS, and from .env import load and find, and I'll say load and find, and then I'll say OpenAI_API_key equals to os.get env OpenAI_API_key. So with this, we will read our OpenAI API key. Now in the main file, let's start working on our agent. So I'll say from agents, import agents and runner. These two are the main thing, and before I move forward, I would like to show you that all the things are available here: agent, running agent, result streaming, tool, handoff, tracing, and everything. So if you want to dig deeper into the documentation, I highly encourage that. What I'll do is that I'll create my first agent using agent. This will take a name, let's say assistant. It will take lots of information, but we will not provide any of those at this point. What we will do is that we will start running this. So I'll say async def main, and I'll say, let's say result equals to await runner dot run. This will take starting agent, that will be my agent, and I guess input, that will be my question. I'll say hi, and my bad, it is result. Okay, and then what we can do is that I'll print result dot final output, and in order to run this, I'll say if underscore name equals to underscore main underscore, then run this thing. But since we are working asynchronously, I'll import async IO, and that will help us run the main function, which is asynchronous. So this is all good. When I say python main.py, we will face an error. It says OpenAI API key is not set. Now there are two ways to set OpenAI API key. I'll show you both of them. So the first is in the start of the code, OS environ OpenAI underscore API underscore key equals to, I'll import our config now, and I'll say config.openai API key. So what this does is set the environment variable OpenAI API key. I guess I'll say, or let's say I'll say this is equivalent to export OpenAI API underscore key equals to this sk and long string. Okay, this is equal to that thing. So now if we run this file, we will see our response. Hello, how can I assist you today? And this thing, OpenAI API key is not set, skipping trace export. So this thing helps us in exporting all the traces of the agent rundown, but we will not look into that at this moment. So you can see that we have created our own first agent and it is working good. And it says, hello, how can I assist you today? Now let's learn the other way to set environment variable OpenAI API key. And for that, what I'll do is that I'll import few things from here. One is OpenAI response model and async OpenAI. These two will help us create our async OpenAI client so that we don't have to do this part. So here it takes few things, that is model will our OpenAI response model. It will take model name. I'll say GPT-4o mini to save some tokens, obviously. Then it will take OpenAI client. That this will be our async OpenAI client. Now this will take API key. We'll provide it using our config, and it takes base URL, default, other things. Okay, so in case you want to use another provider like Fireworks, then you can use it, but for that you don't, or you can't use AI responses model. You need to use I guess the other one is OpenAI chat completion model. But since I'm using OpenAI, I'll use OpenAI responses model. And let me get rid of this as well. Yeah, so this seems okay. So if I run this, we'll see the same response again. Now let's add a tool into the application. Let's first add a simple tool. This tool will help us get the current date and time. So I'll say async def fetch current date time. It will take nothing and it will return a string, and I'll provide a doc string fetch the current date and time, and let's say now equals to date time, and let me import date time dot now tz, and I'll also import time zone as well, time zone dot utc. Okay, and we'll say return now into string format, and I'll just pass the variable c so that it will take care of the formatting. So now this thing is done. What we can do is that we can very easily attach this function to our agent, and for that we need to import few things. The first thing is function tool annotator. So we'll say function tool. When we do this, it will convert this function into the schema or the tool schema that we used to use in OpenAI API calls. Now this can take few things. If you see here, description override and name override. So in case you want to provide the name and description about the tool here, you can do it. Otherwise it will understand the name or extract the name and description from these two things, doc string and function name. So I'll go with this approach, doc string and function name. Now what we can do is tools, and I'll add our first tool, fetch current date and time. Now if I come here, instead of hi, I'll say what date is today, and when I question mark and save this, and when I run this, we'll see this response. Today's date is 16 March. Now this seems okay that we see the final response, but let's say we want to see different things, which tool called, what was the tool's output, and how it go through all the things. Let's create a small function that will help us do this thing. So instead of writing that, I'll just copy paste a small function. So this function basically does is it takes a stream events from the agent's call, and then it see what event type is there. So raw response do this, otherwise agent updated, that means in case of hands off do this. If you have run item, then do this. So let me clearly do the imports here. We are so from OpenAI types dot responses import run. Oh, my bad, it is not from this, it is from this run result streaming, and then there is item helper, I guess. Yeah, both of this, and yeah, I guess this will come from OpenAI types. OpenAI types responses import this. So I guess we have now no any warnings. So now what we will do is that we will await the print result function, and it takes the result, we'll pass the result. I'll save this and yeah, see how this goes. So I'll say python main.py. Oh, it says, yeah, so my bad, here we need to use run stream, and now we can't await that. Okay, so you can see this assistant was called, this tool was called, there was no input arguments. As you can see here, we are printing the input arguments as a no name and arguments. There is no input arguments. This is the tool output and this is the final output. So this is kind of a very helpful function for us to understand. Now let's see the other way to create a tool. To create a tool which has input arguments and other things, we need to divide it into 4 small sub parts. So I'll say to do the first thing, define schema or model. Then the second thing is to write the actual function that is going to perform some action. Then write a wrapper function that will be used in tool, and then finally create the tool itself. So I'll very quickly write few things, so you don't have to see me type. Okay, so this is the first thing. This is the base class. Let's say you want to build an agent that helps user book a table at a restaurant. So for that we'll take restaurant name, date, time window and number of person that are visiting the restaurant, and this will be our base schema. Yeah, and let me import this from typing as well. Yeah, so this will be our base schema. So the first task is done. Then write the actual function. So I'll write the actual function now, and the actual function will be this thing. Let me import this. I'll say any, and let's import random as well. I'm not sure why this was not, yeah, any as well. So now see here, this is the actual function that we will run. This function at this point, it takes two things: a context. We'll look into this context when we get there, and this is the arguments. So this argument refers to this base data class, and we will receive that. And what I have done is that I have used random to flip the cases. Either you have the seat available at a restaurant or you don't have the seat at the restaurant, but we will call our actual APIs here and generate a string response after the API call. Now I will write a wrapper function around this fetch table availability. So this is the wrapper function, run fetch table availability. So now this run fetch availability function will be used as a tool. So the agent's SDK will pass two things into this, the context, which is run context wrapper, and arguments, which is in string. So what we will do is that with our base model, we will validate the string and convert our string into our model, and we can pass that, so that here we are expecting this model and the context which is provided by the agent SDK itself. Now the last part is to create the tool itself, and it will take this function tool. So it has a name. Make sure it is all small case and without any spaces or special characters. Then there is a description. Then there is params JSON schema. This is what we are going to use, and we'll convert it into JSON schema. Then on invoke tool. So that means when this tool is called, what you want to do, I want to run this function, and these two arguments will be passed by the agent SDK itself. And this strict JSON schema, this needs to be kept as false in order for this to work. So this is the 4 steps to create a custom function. Now let's add this to our it is fetch availability tool. So we have attached our own custom tool to our assistant, and now I can say that, let's say I want to book a table at, let's say, Taj Hotel for 5 people, let's say tomorrow around 8 p.m. So when you write this, let's see what happens. So you can see the first tool was called the date tool call, because we have written tomorrow. The assistant doesn't know what to do with tomorrow. So what actually it does is it calls the fetch current date time, understand, okay, this is Sunday, March 16, so tomorrow is 17, and then it calls the fetch availability tool. So you can see it is not ambiguous while filling the information. Then it calls this tool, then this is the schema was supplied, and randomly it has generated that, okay, we have the seat availables, and it is asking, do you want to book or not. So this is our tool output, basically, my bad. And this is the final output generated by LLM. Seats are available at this hotel for blah blah blah. So you can see how convenient and easy this is. So now let's say I'll write some future scope as well. Let's say you have a join weight list function confirm booking function. Okay, so this way you can make this whole flow complete. Now let's move to the other sections of this agent, or the things that are useful to understand. And the next thing I want to show you is guardrail. So let me minimize all of these, so because it's taking too much space here. And yeah, okay, so let's create a guardrail. So a guardrail is a thing that runs in parallel and make sure that the user's input is kind of a valid input that you want to answer. Because if it is not valid input, or it is ambiguous question that your assistant doesn't support, then you will stop using your high cost LLMs and just response to the user that you don't help doing or answering that question. So now let's build our guardrail. So the guardrail also has few things. The first thing, you need a schema for the guardrail. Then you need to create a function that calls the guardrail. And finally, add the guardrail to the agent. So I'll very quickly copy few amount of code here. So this is our pydantic model. It says that is table booking tool, so means the query related to table booking or not, and the reasoning behind the output. Then we'll create an agent. My bad, we need to create an agent that will work as a guardrail. Okay, so this agent will work as a guardrail. We'll say guard check if the user is asking you about restaurant and table booking at a restaurant, and this will take the output schema. And then now we will actually create our guardrail. So I'll import few things. This is coming from as well, agent as well. So what this thing does is that it actually runs the query on this guardrail. If it is a valid query, it moves ahead. Otherwise it will trigger a tripwire error or exception. Exception. So in order to use this into our agent, what we will need to do is that here under agent section, I'll say input guardrails, and we will provide our not guardrail agent but our function. The name of the function is table booking guardrail. So we'll provide that. So now when we will run this, it will create an exception. So I'll then add this into a try catch. Input guardrail trip wire triggered. I'm not sure if I have wrote this correctly. Okay, so I'll come here and I'll say input guardrail tripwire triggered. Okay, let's copy that. I'll come here, and if this is the case, we'll print that I can't help you with this query. I can only help you with restaurant table booking. Okay, so let's replicate this one more time, and now I'll say, for example, what is the weather today? So this will come into this guardrail agent, or this guardrail function basically, which is calling the agent itself. Then it will check if if this is true, then go ahead. If this is false, then we have set not, that means this true. So we'll make tripwire trigger true, and when it is true, it will generate this exception and will come here. So when I'll save this, and let me clear the screen, and when I say python main.py, okay, so this was our usual thing, and then then this thing is, I currently don't have access to real-time weather. You can check. I'm not sure why okay, let's say I'll change the question, who is Mahatma Gandhi, and let me clear the screen, and let's run this file again to see if I'm making a mistake or not. Okay, so now, because the weather was kind of a restaurant booking, it falls into that category, but this is very ambiguous question than the restaurant booking. So it triggered this exception, and we have shown this message. And obviously you can play with this instruction or instructions, so that you can also trigger the exception for the weather or other kinds of question that you don't want to handle. Now the final thing I want to show you here is a context. So consider context as a thing which which is related to moving metadata about a particular user who is interacting with the agent throughout the conversation. So which is detailed here in the context management. So very quickly, let's run down that. So what I'll do is that I'll create a new base model for our context, and let's say this is the user info base model that has name and user ID. Now what you need to do is that when you run the application itself, here you will create a user info, and then here it takes a context. You can pass the context here, so let's pass the context here. So I'll say context equals to user info, and here as well context equals to user info. And so the things where you have seen this any, I'll say user info. There was other place as well, not here. Yeah, here as well. And in order to maintain the user info context, you need to pass it here as well. So wherever you go, this agent will have the context, but you can set the context only once. If even you have used hands off, you can use the context only once. So now if you come here and so this is the actual function which will call our fetch table information API endpoint, and I'll pass the context here. So you will see the context being available here, and there is some, okay, we don't need any at this point now. So when I save this and when I run this, you'll see that, yeah, so this tool was called, this was the tool output, and here is the context available in this fetch table availability, and then you can use this context to do anything that you want to do. So I guess this is kind of a basic rundown about the OpenAI Agents SDK. You can learn more things about this OpenAI SDK. For example, we haven't touched into hands-off and tracing, though we have used guardrails, we have used models, tools, streaming agents, running agents as well. So I hope this will give you a very quick start and make you able to understand how this Agents SDK works. I hope this will give you a head start using OpenAI Agents SDK. If you face any issue or if you face any errors running the code I have shown in this video, please get back to me into the comment section. I'll surely help you. Finally, if you like the work I put on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to my channel. That helps. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the life. Feel the music. Peace.